Hello everybody, welcome back to ESPN's Football Forecast. It's the Manchester derby this weekend, Man City against Manchester United, two teams in very different situations, which has been the case for quite some time actually. Nubaid, you have said very recently, 20 seconds ago in fact, that this is a funny little team that Man United have got here.
They are.
What do you mean by that as we begin to preview this big game?
They flip-flop between being some wonderful side, if the situation is right, to being an atrocious side who can't get the ball off Fulham. That's a funny little team to me. That's the definition of a funny little team. You don't know what to expect.
I think they're having a weird old season. That's what I would go with. I don't think they've been... I was thinking about this. When was the last time Man United were awesome? Like in a game. I'm not saying a season. Like last year they had a good run. But this year, I can't remember many games where they've been, wow. Man, like they beat Everton 3-0, but even that game I thought Everton kind of went toe-to-toe with them, and it was just, Garnacho scores an outrageous goal. They have had problems, though, haven't they, Kweku, in terms of the injury crisis, which is probably going to hurt them in this game as well, would you say?
Yeah. The thing is, every team can point to injuries, and we've seen it a lot this season, so I don't want to hear it as an excuse.
You're not having it?
I'm a Chelsea fan, and I haven't used it. I haven't used it once as an excuse this season. I don't think Manchester United should either.
But it's quite a list, isn't it? Come on, Luke Shaw out till May, Martinez early April, Martial end of March, Malacia still out, although he's been out the whole season. But it's another left back, which is a big problem, which we'll talk about. Højlund, Mount, Wan-Bissaka, Harry Maguire, but he could, Harry Maguire, of course, playing the Fulham game. Which one's the biggest miss out of those guys for you?
Rasmus Højlund, because they'd found something good in the front three. Garnacho, who's not quite nuanced enough to play on the left. So on the right, he's decent as a winger because he can cross the ball in, provide service, even though he doesn't provide enough service for Højlund, in my opinion. And Rashford is way more comfortable on the left. You saw Rashford play down the middle against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup, wasn't good enough. You saw Rashford play down the middle against Fulham, wasn't good enough. And you see by his body language, he doesn't want to play there. Rasmus Højlund has found some good goal-scoring form. He's scored in 6 consecutive games. And for a player that a lot of people have written off already, for him to be missing now until mid-March is a big blow for Manchester United, because I think Ten Hag has just sorted out that front three. And if you look at him as a manager in totality, he doesn't really like to rotate his sides, even in cup competitions. And so the fact that he's missing the guaranteed starter in Rasmus Højlund, and now he has to shift around his front three. You see Garnacho playing on the left where he's not as comfortable because he's not got those moves that you see the best wingers in the world have, where they can cut in and finish. He hasn't got that quite yet. So I think the Rasmus Højlund injury is a big one. But in terms of the rest of that list, Anthony Martial is not a starter. He's going to be leaving Manchester United very soon. Malacia has not established himself as a starter either. Wan-Bissaka is actually not a starter anymore. Harry Maguire's not either. And so you've got Martinez, you've got Luke Shaw, and you've got Højlund. 3 injuries to your first 11. Most teams in the Premier League have that.
This season is probably one of the rarest seasons where I go, I actually don't care about any team's injuries. Because if you think, I'll go to maybe a team like Newcastle. Botman's been out for ages. Pope's been out for ages. Liverpool currently don't have Alisson, Trent or Salah, which on a normal day you'd say are 3 of their most important players. Brighton have missed Solly March all season, Mitoma at different times. Every team has injury problems, but Manchester United seem to be the only team that go, if we lose Lissandro, it's over. We just cannot do anything. That for me screams an identity issue, which I think you just said then. We've not once watched them and gone, what a good side. Every time you watch them, you go, oh, how have they won that? Or someone scored a worldie, or Casemiro scored a header in the 96th minute. These things are non-sustainable in football. Yeah,
it's moments with Man United. It has been for some time. And actually, talk about all these injuries. I think on a case-by-case basis, fine. They've got miles more points than I expected them to have. Look at goal difference. That isn't a good metric to always, as a top line, go on. And their goal difference is flat. It's 0. And look at the teams around them. It tells you a story. They have had huge fortune in terms of the style of play, both with the ball and without the ball. First of all, with the ball, one thing I guess you're getting the ball. First of all, it's only Liverpool that have had more direct attacks than them this year, 66 direct attacks. And then in terms of high turnovers, so high turnovers, obviously teams that kind of press, win the ball high at the pitch. Most teams look to do that these days. You then obviously want to get something from that. Klopp famously said that's the best playmaker you can have is that, gegenpress. Man United got the second most high turnovers this season. They've scored 2 goals. That says to me that you have a team that has been chasing games a lot of the time. And even if they were looking to press high at times, it's one where they don't know what to do once they get it. Because to have that many high turnovers, you should have something in play that you go, right, go, because we're all aligned. The alignment is still not there. And then without the ball, It's a disaster as well, isn't it?
It's terrible. And you see the frustration from Ten Hag, because he talks about that in terms of turning the ball over high up on the pitch. And he's doing his job in terms of he's getting his team to do that. So in terms of putting the ball in the back of the net is where Man United are struggling. And it's when you look at this Man United team, I watched the game against Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup, and they're relying on players like McTominay to score goals. He's one of their biggest goal threats. That screams an issue. And I'm looking at Ten Hag and I'm trying to work out, is it a him issue? Because it seems like he sold his soul. He sacrificed a lot. When they lost those 2 games against Brentford and Brighton at the beginning of last season, we have not seen an identity from Manchester United since. And I understand that he won a trophy last season. They finished in the top 4. And overall, it was a great season. But he's turned into a reactive manager rather than a proactive manager. And that's not what Manchester United signed up for. And that's not what they need. Yeah. They need a manager that can implement a philosophy. And we've not seen that since Ten Hag's been manager.
Time and time again, you have I think the first half of a game is so important because you can see what people are trying to do. Whenever I'm watching games, the bulk of my notes are from that first half. And I think that's what's happening with Man United. You say reactive. It's reactive because they kind of have to be. Because, say, defensively, they've got the 4th most shots against this year. Arsenal got 200 less. That's outrageous.
That's insane.
When they're supposed to be in that same world. So they're not. And the big problems, I think, for them in terms of those shots is not being compact enough. And you're playing against a team with outrageous control of the ball, incredible rotation, players who can come short and playing behind, and people who in central areas can be pretty special as well. This could be really ugly for Man United, don't you think, with the way that Man City are playing at the moment? They're looking good.
The last few have been. And also, I think Man City have got to that point, and we say it all the time, where they were, I thought, very raw and rough around the edges at the start of the season and even in the middle part of the season. And I actually thought, and we said as well, this might be the season where they have a bit of a drop-off. And I think they actually have had a drop-off, but their drop-off is still... They're still so good that a drop-off doesn't affect them that much. And I think now they're starting to purr. Haaland scored 5 against Luton.
Everyone's fit.
Everyone's fit. Typical. De Bruyne's just sat on the bench chilling at the moment. Yeah. Foden's in really good form. Probably the best form he's been in consistently for City. The one key, as we've always said, is Rodri. And I think this is where it's sort of Manchester United have the opposite issue. With City, you've got Rodri, ever so reliable, brilliant at tracking his man, brilliant in a big game. On the flip side, Manchester United, their midfielders don't track their men whatsoever. And that'll be a big issue for City because one of the I wouldn't say new ways, but one of the ways that Guardiola's gone back to is the byline winger and a cutback, with either Foden coming in late into the box or Alvarez, and Manchester United do not deal well with cutbacks whatsoever.
They don't, and it's interesting in terms of the reliance on individuals of Manchester United. You outlined it before, but if you look at Casemiro, who last season a huge part of his game was scoring winners for Manchester United. He scored a goal in the cup final. He scored a goal against Forest midweek, and they need players like that to turn up. If you think about the goal that Kobe Manu scored in the last minute against Wolves, they needed him to do that. And if you're relying on players that the biggest facet of the game is not to score goals, you need them to score goals, then you're running into problems, and you're running into a juggernaut in Man City who are just on a different level, and it's gone under the radar. They've won 14 out of their last 15 games in all competitions. They've drawn the other one, and that's just gone under the radar. People think Man City are not in great form. They are a joke, and they've set new standards and new levels to the point now where we're just overlooking them. We're looking for narratives. We're looking for stories. Can Arsenal do it? Can Liverpool do it? No, Man City are going to do it because they're Man City and they're the greatest team that we've ever seen in the Premier League.
You would imagine so. And I think the great thing about football is that kind of anything can happen, and they would almost have to be somewhat unfortunate because they do look like such a well-oiled machine. One thing that we kind of, again, maybe we're looking for a crack here. In terms of Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland's had a couple of tricky games and then slaps in 5 against Luton. Kevin De Bruyne with 4 assists in that game. I think he's got 12 assists in 12 since he's come back. But when it comes to the run-in and what Man City want to achieve, do these two have to start every game now?
I think these two have to click, because I do think Haaland...
Continue to click on me.
Continue to. Yeah. I do think Haaland has, quote-unquote, struggled. And especially when De Bruyne's not there, there is a lack of creativity towards Haaland. Again, people are going to say he scored a lot of goals. I completely hear that.
Scored 5 in his last games.
Against Luton in a cup game.
I get your point.
There's a few things that I think... If we're absolutely digging for cracks, they don't win the league if De Bruyne's not fit, because Haaland does need service, and I think they struggle without De Bruyne in there. And he is the X factor. He's got 10 goal contributions in the last 17 games against United. I can almost remember all of them as well, because he does it at the crunch time. Yeah. They've got big games coming. He's the crunch time player. I don't think Haaland's going to score you a 90-minute winner every game, but De Bruyne has the capacity to do that every single game, and that's what makes him scary.
And the fact that they've lost one of your favourite players of all time, and Gundogan, who was that player for them in the crunch last season, De Bruyne has to... I think he's on a mission as well, because we all know how great Kevin De Bruyne is, but he's growing his hair out, the PR's a bit different, you're seeing him at events. I think Kevin De Bruyne, if Man City go and win the league this season and go and win the Champions League as well, and he's the fulcrum of that, we are talking about him in rarefied air, in the air that we only talk about the best centre midfielders, not just in Premier League history, but in the history of football. And so him and Haaland connecting is imperative to Man City going on and winning the trophies that we expect them to win. And you see the difference in terms of the impetus when Haaland makes runs in behind. When De Bruyne is playing, he's constantly making the run. He's constantly pulling out the back post because he knows the ball is coming in. And City have got such great players, but they're maybe not on the same wavelength as Haaland at all times. But De Bruyne is, and I think that Man United are going to be in trouble if De Bruyne and Haaland click on the weekend.
Can I throw a question out there? We've obviously said Manchester City are definitely going to win this game, pretty much. How do Manchester United win this game? Because in the previous years, when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would get a result of a Pep Guardiola, it was transition football. I still think that's the best way for Manchester United to play. That's when they've looked their best. The Aston Villa games, both of them. And Man City have been leaky at the back. It's not that Man City have been really difficult to break down. So I think that, I'm not saying United could win, but if they are to win, that's probably the only way.
I think it's obviously on the break. I think it's one where, say, someone like John Stones, who I think is help more than a hindrance. Say he's stepping in. The one thing that has hurt them in previous games this season has been being able to play it up high and sort of get those scraps around you. I know Wolves did that brilliantly, and also had players who could drive with the ball as well. But that's where I'm struggling, because Rashford will play centre forward. Rashford won't compete for those kind of headers. In terms of the players around them, I would get Bruno out of there. I'd put him on the right-hand side. I would pack that midfield. And maybe it's one. See, that's the thing. Maybe it's like you swap Rashford and McTominay a little bit with some of those long balls. But I think you played quite direct. And I think you hang in there, to be honest. But I think you're looking for moments. And I've got to be honest.
But that one is thing what they look for.
Sorry?
That is what they look for in any game. Anyway.
In all of these games, whenever we do preview them, same when we've been chatting about Liverpool, it's always been sort of Rashford just sort of moping about up front. The name I keep looking at is Lindelof. I think that left side is going to be a horrible place to be at the weekend. And I also think that it's one thing that definitely Man City have done. They're only playing with one winger. They're not really playing with two wingers anymore because they want Foden to play in a more central area. And I just wonder if this is one for Doku on the right and just go after Lindelof. Obviously, you've got to drop an amazing player if that happens, and maybe that might not be the case. I think he'll have a big part to play. But I just can't. I can't see Man United not getting destroyed in this game.
It's time. I think in these big games, there's normally managers are risk averse, especially if you're Ten Hag going into this game against Man City. But I've seen it firsthand where top managers make very, very bold decisions, and this shouldn't be a bold decision, but for me, Amad Diallo has to play. If you're talking about making it compact in the middle, Amad Diallo is a player that can play a little bit more centrally. He's not an out-and-out winger. And he's just got so much more ability than Anthony, who I think we're going to see play extensive minutes in this game. I'd love to see a player like Amad make an appearance. I remember seeing Trent burst onto say, I think it was in a big game for Liverpool. It wasn't a case of you blood them in. You make a bold decision in a big game, and someone like Ahmad is an X factor that Man City do have tape on. Obviously, he was great in the Championship last season, but that could be an X factor that could maybe shake up City a little bit. So I'd love to see a player like that.
No player can drive with the ball as well. You've got three dribblers there, so that gives you something. Let's have a prediction then. What are you saying about it?
We're relying on Amad Diallo, Kobe Manu and Lindelof. I'm sorry, lads. I'm saying Man City 4-1. But I think it's going to be one of those where it's like City have 35 shots on goal.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going 3-1 Man City. I think it's going to be pretty comfortable.
I think it'll be 3-0. I think it'll be utterly dominant. I think there'll be a huge fallout, but I won't be surprised. And I'd be surprised if those people were surprised. Does anyone think that Man United can win this one? I imagine Man United fans might chuck a 1-0 out there, a sneaky one. Let us know in the comments down below.